Welcome, lore enthusiasts. I'm your host, Tamrielic Stories, and welcome to Stories of the Scrolls. Today, we will discover the story of the Khajiit. Before we start, I would like to say that this topic came to mind when I was talking about the Khajiit with a good friend of mine. If you're watching this, you know who you are. The Khajiit, one of the two beast races present in Tamriel. They inhabit the province of Elsewhere. Khajiit are known for their natural agility, talent for stealth, and the production of moon sugar that can be refined into the most popular drug on Tamriel, skooma. Let's start off with the culture. Khajiit, as well as Argonians, has lived on Tamriel long before the elves or humans arrived, leading many to believe that the beast races are native to Tamriel. Topol the Pilot, the founder of the Aelid Empire, described the Khajiit as a primitive feline race that lives in the forest around Lake Rumer. It's likely that the humans and the elves eventually drove the Khajiit into the parts of the land that is now known as Elsewhere that were considered uninhabitable by the races of Man and Mer. For a long time, the Khajiit lives in tribes and factions all over Elsewhere, with internal wars between tribes and factions, until a peace was settled based on the phases of the moons, until the year 309 of the Second Era, with the official founding of Elsewhere by two powerful factions, probably the two kingdoms that are still in power today, the kingdom of Anaquina and Palatine. Imperial influence over the province has been mainly in the south because of the fertile grounds along the southern rivers, the production of multiple kinds of crops, and mostly salt rice. In fact, salt rice is the most exported product from Elsewhere. The Khajiit who produce moon sugar and make it into skooma are dependent on this export because they can hide the skooma in between the bags of rice on the ships. In the south, a large part of the population is referred to as sugar tooths, a slang term for skooma addicts. Some Khajiit, however, seem to function better under the influence than not. The leader of Elsewhere is a special kind of Khajiit and is called the Mane. The Mane is born when the moons have aligned fully. The mane can be identified by the extremely long outgrown mane braided together with the mane of other Khajiit who have shaven off their own manes as a sign of respect. More on different kinds of Khajiit later. Then, religion. The religion of the Khajiit carries a resemblance to the Aldmeri pantheon, so the pantheon of the precursor race to all elven races. Although the names are different, Anu and Padme, known as Athur and Phalanme, are ancestral cats. The god of the Khajiiti religions are named as follows, but I will put normal names on the screen for you. We have Alkosh, Kenrothi, Magrus, Mara, Sirendar, Meruns, Mafala, Sengin, Mazura, Lorkaj, Nuni, and the Moons. These names are all given to celestial cats. It's special, I'll keep it at that. There's some speculation on how accurate the story of creation is that is told by the Khajiit, but it's similar to the one told across Tamriel. If you're interested, I have a video on the story of creation, link is in the description below. What we do know is that the moons bear a huge role and are sacred to the Khajiit, since the phase of the moons decide what form the Khajiit take birth. Now later on, the Elsewhere kingdoms of Anaquina and Palatine have been brought into the Aldmeri dominion, and that has also everything to do with the moons. Not because the moons told them to do it, like the Hist would do to the Argonians if that would ever come to pass, but because the moons disappeared in an event known as the Void Nights. Now eventually, the moons reappeared in the sky and everything was back to normal, but then the Thalmor came in. They claimed, just as with the end of the Oblivion Crisis, that they were the ones who brought the moons back. And the Khajiit were so grateful to the Thalmor and the Altmer and the Aldmeri Dominion by extension that they agreed to join the Aldmeri Dominion. Now, speaking of the forms that that Khajiit take, depending on the phase of the moons. So speaking of that, let's dive into it. First, the phases of the moons can be full, waxing, new, and waning. Master decides the main type of Khajiit, and Secunda decides the final variation. For each variation, there's a rot version that is mostly more bestial. Let's begin with Master in its full phase. This creates the large quadrupeds, so the ones that walk on 4 legs. When Secunda is in its full phase, the Khajiit will be a Senshi, a large tiger-like Khajiit that is used as a steed for other Khajiit. But if this is voluntary, that's not known for sure. When Secunda is in its waxing phase, you get a Senshi rot, a larger version of the Senshi, twice the size of a high elf and used as battle cats, even though they are a bit slower than their non-rot counterparts. When Secunda is in its new phase, we get the Pamar, sharing an appearance with tigers, just as large and just as fearsome. The Pomerot is born when Secunda is in its waning phase, similar to the normal Pamar, only bigger, stronger, and even more fearsome than the normal ones. When Master is in his waxing phase, you get large bipeds, so ones that walk on 2 legs. In Secunda's full phase, we see the Cathay, a common type of Khajiit. This is the type of Khajiit that we see in Skyrim and Oblivion. Then, the Cathay Rot appears when Secunda is in its waxing phase. This type is more jaguar-like, causing other races to call them the Jaguar Men. But of course this is not correct. It's Cathay Wrath. When Secunda is in its new phase, we get the Toge, a lesser known type of Khajiit that lives in the Tenmar forest, marshes and deep in the jungles of elsewhere. They like to keep to themselves. When Secunda is in his waning phase, we get the Toge Rot. We know almost nothing about this type, except that it's bigger than normal Toge and lives in the same area. When Master is in his new phase, we get small bipeds. Starting off, when Secunda is in its full phase, one of the Omes is born. This type is almost indistinguishable from your typical wood elf, apart from the fact that the Omesh are a bit shorter. When Secunda is in its waxing phase, then you get the Omes Rot, similar to their non-rot counterparts, but the Omes Rot are bigger, almost the height of a man, except for the golden fur and tail. When Secunda is in its new phase, we get the Suthe, similar to the Omes but more cat-like and with more feline facial features. The Suthe Rot comes into being when Secunda is in its waning phase, almost indistinguishable from the normal Suthe, except that they are a bit taller. This is the type we see most in Morrowind. When Master is in his waning phase, the small quadrupeds are born. First, the Elfique. These Khajiit are born when Secunda is in its full phase. This Khajiit resembles your average house cat, like this one on screen now. Interestingly, these Elfique are used in war as spies, since they are intelligent and capable of speech. When Secunda is waxing, the Elfique Rot are born. This type is just a bit larger in stature than the normal Elfique, and little else besides that is known about them. In Secunda's new phase, we see the Daji, larger than the Elfique by some distance. The Daji, while still short, are lanky, lightweight and agile. These Khajiit primarily live in the trees along the top branches. When Secunda is in its waning phase, the Daji Rot are born. Only slightly larger than their non-rot cousins, but they still live in the top of trees. And lastly, when the moons align perfectly, it is said that the third moon appears. When this happens, a mane is born. This Khajiit has a long, outgrown mane, which is braided with the manes of other Khajiit who shaven their own manes off as a sign of respect to the mane, the leader. Now, if you want to know what type of Khajiit you are, I'll put a link in the description to a website where you can find out what type of Khajiit you are by answering a few simple questions. that was the story of the Khajiit. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be very much appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't, and let me know what topic you would like to learn about in the comments below. Until we meet again, lore enthusiasts, Talos guide you.